Over the weekend, I feel like salary cap talks have picked up momentum again, especially since the Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker. And I just want to talk about it for a little bit because it's a topic I guess I'm particularly passionate about. And I just don't understand why fans always go towards salary cap as the way to fix the problems in baseball. Now, what I do want to get off the top, is there a way to improve the system that we currently operate in? I do think so. I do agree, as a Dodger fan, the deferred payments that the Dodgers are able to do, it is pretty crazy. It probably can't be matched by many other teams. Is there a way to fix that system? I'm open for discussion. 2, is the Dodgers' ability to go and get whoever they want, whenever they want, because they can just throw their money around, does it feel a little bit unfair? Sure, I can acknowledge it probably is a little bit unfair, but to this point, I will always say our roster is now, and you can see it, you can track the timeline, a series of moves that other teams did not make or did make that led to this roster as it is today. We'll go to Mookie Betts in 2020 just as an easy line. If Mookie Betts does not get traded to the Dodgers, I don't know how many of these downstream events occur. Does Freddie Freeman still come to the Dodgers? But on the Freddie Freeman point, if the Atlanta Braves just re-signed him, he never comes to the Dodgers. He wanted to stay in Atlanta. He didn't get the offer from them. The agent didn't share it. Again, the details on that are a little bit murky, but ultimately, he does not get re-signed. He ends up with the Dodgers. All those other moves, and then Shohei Ohtani, I think, is the big one. The deferred payment, I think, is what people are really against. I think him coming to the Dodgers was probably a very natural move. He didn't want to leave the West Coast, closer to Japan, already comfortable in Southern California. But the $2 million per year that they're paying now, and then the $68 million that they're putting in deferred payments is probably what you all are upset about, which, again, I can say maybe there's a different way we could set that up so you can't defer that much money. But Shohei Ohtani, being a player who wants to win it all, had never had that experience in Anaheim, clearly wanted that to happen, made it a priority. So I can acknowledge that is a little bit quote-unquote unfair. But again, I think for the Dodgers, they are operating within the confines of the system that is set up. They're doing nothing outside of those things. And so for people to be upset about that, I do understand it, but I think that they're being upset at the wrong thing. Now, let's say we put that to the side and we talk about a salary cap. What, in my mind, I'm curious about is when people say that salary cap will increase parity, I don't really know what parity means because I've heard a lot of arguments. One, it guarantees more competitive balance. I would argue that that's something that baseball does not struggle with since 1984. And I picked 1984 because that's when NBA implemented their salary cap. In the NFL, it was 1994. But since 1984, MLB has had 90% of the teams make the World Series at least one time. The only 3 that haven't are the Pittsburgh Pirates, Seattle Mariners, and the Milwaukee Brewers. All the other leagues, post-salary cap, the number is still around 70% of the league that has made their Super Bowl or the finals. So baseball already has the most parity from the highest level of making it to the World Series. I don't think it's realistic that there's any system where every single team going into a season thinks that they have a chance at reaching the World Series or the finals or the Super Bowl, because some of the teams, they're not incentivizing themselves or setting themselves up for that. Some of them are tanking. Some of them want to lose. Some of them are pursuing different routes of success that might be more long-term versus short-term. And when that happens, you're inherently going to have teams that aren't going to make the finals or even the playoffs very consistently. So when you say parity, if you're saying, no, it's not about who makes the World Series, it's who has a chance at the playoffs, I don't think it's necessarily that hard to make the playoffs in baseball 1 year out of every 10 or 1 year out of every 7. And for some teams, the reality is the way that they operate, that is kind of the ceiling for them. That sounds shitty, I understand, but that is just inherently what is happening when the players that you are drafting, the players that you are signing, they're not all equal. Each of these players are unique and individual, and some are good and some are bad, some are better, some are best. And so I think what I have a problem with is the ill-defined term of parity and what that actually looks like. Because I think right now people are hoping for it, praying for it. This idea that, let's say the Pittsburgh Pirates suddenly feel like they're going to be competitive for the World Series. I do not find that to be the case because their team is just run very poorly. They have not really gone out and gotten good talent. They have not really made aggressive moves to fill their roster up when they've had a history of signing pretty, or at least drafting pretty good pitchers. But they're just not doing what they need to do to be as successful. Again, I'm actually not saying that they should just spend more money to spend more money, but I think that's the point. A salary cap probably comes with a salary floor, and now it just gives the owners a bare minimum to spend to say, hey, we spent the salary floor, let us reap the benefits of all the money that is coming in from the teams like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Phillies, the big market teams that are generating a lot of TV revenue. And I know the Dodgers TV deal is something that can't be matched by any team, and that creates a lot of the advantage that we have. I'm acknowledging that to you. But my argument back is that your teams, the ones that are operating poorly, they are not suddenly going to wake up and operate well. It really comes down to the ownership group and how they think about their team and what they're willing to do to make that team successful. Now, I think there are teams who are trying hard that don't win, and that's just very unfortunate. But I think as a fan base, you can see that they are trying hard, that they are going for it, that they are putting in the work to try to make it successful. How the Angels never even made an ALCS with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, that's an ownership issue. That's a management issue. I don't think that's a salary cap issue, especially at a time when they could have just invested more and more money. I'm not saying that they didn't spend. They did spend, but they had to spend well. And I think that's where people get really annoyed by the Dodgers, because Andrew Friedman is the best in the business. He's operating in a small market way with the biggest team's budget. And so when he needs to, he can just throw out 4 years, $160 million, whatever it is to Kyle Tucker, $240 million to Kyle Tucker, because he has that kind of bankroll behind him. But again, implementing a salary cap doesn't suddenly change the fortunes of your team if the management stays the same. I just have a hard time understanding that logic. And I've yet to see a clear example of a team that really is trying their best, let's say, in every way that they can, and just feel like the reason they can't win is because the Dodgers are outspending them. The Dodgers literally came down to the last two batters. Miguel Rojas was a ninth inning, 1-out home run to tie the game, and then it went to extra innings. It wasn't Shohei Ohtani, it wasn't Freddie Freeman, it wasn't Teoscar, it was Miguel Rojas, a player that I personally question why he was on the team. So as people argue for a salary cap, which I do think is going to come, or some form of it, I hope that they understand that their team doesn't suddenly get better because a salary cap is implemented. And their hope of a good season from their team doesn't suddenly get better because of that salary cap. Parity already exists in Major League Baseball. 90% of the teams have made the World Series since 1984. There are only 3 teams who have never made the World Series. So again, if you're a fan of one of these teams that feel like you can't outspend the Dodgers, you're right, you can't outspend the Dodgers. But you can do a lot more to try and make your team better, or at least you can challenge your ownership group to do more to make your team better, that I promise you a salary cap does not suddenly change their habits and their behavior. It literally just gives them a safe floor to say, if you guys spend this much, you've hit the salary floor, and then they pocket their excess. This is probably the most messed up thing I'm going to say. Not every team deserves, quote unquote, to make money, because a lot of times what you put in is what you get out of it. So if you spend the bare minimum, you're going to make whatever the bare minimum revenue is, but sometimes you have to sacrifice your revenue to win, and that's in spending more money. So it's very complex. I understand that this is kind of it's going to fall on deaf ears coming from a Dodger fan, but if I just think about it rationally, I really don't understand why so much hope is being put into a salary cap as a means of trying to deter the Dodgers. Because we are just going to operate in the best way in whatever structure exists. Yes, we've taken crazy advantage of it over the past few years, but to think that a salary cap is magically going to change that, I'm sorry to tell you, that's not going to happen. That being said, I do think that changes are probably good and beneficial, because I don't want half of the fan bases to just throw their hands up and say, well, we're not going to watch baseball because it's not fair. Clearly, the lessons weren't learned last year, that even with whatever payroll we have, that does not mean that we're just going to steamroll everybody. There are many instances in this season, particularly in the World Series, that I thought we might lose. Genuinely thought we might lose. Didn't happen, but again, it's not an impossibility. And I think the most discouraging thing was hearing players say that they couldn't compete. I feel like athletes at the end of the day always feel like they can. And baseball is different than football, and especially basketball, where in basketball, a star player makes so much more of a difference because there's only so many people that can have the ball. There are so many shots that can be had. It's a different game. In basketball, a salary cap is extremely necessary. Because the Knicks can go out and just sign every single player, or the Lakers can go out and just sign every single player, and it's pretty much game over. But that's just not how that works in that sport. And so a salary cap is necessary so that they can prevent that. In baseball, a pitcher has a bad day, suddenly their whole rotation is messed up for the series, if there's a hot hitter at some point, like, that can overcome a lot of the deficiencies you think exists. And hoping for that and relying on a suddenly super hot batter that is way outside the norm, of course, that is not a winnable long-term strategy. But that's the beauty of baseball. You never know who these unsung heroes are going to be in the postseason that suddenly make a name for themselves. And so it's been a little bit discouraging and honestly a little bit bewildering to me that a lot of people who I think are pretty smart online really think that a salary cap suddenly fixes all of these issues, quote unquote, that they see exist, even though viewership is up, even though I feel like baseball is in a healthier place than it's been in a long, long time. Even though all those things are there, it's been discouraging to see so many people think that this is a magic solution that's going to fix everything. I'm sorry to tell you, the Dodgers are set up to dominate in whatever world you want to put them in. Salary cap, no salary cap. The Dodgers are going to continue to be successful because of Andrew Friedman and this ownership group and their willingness to spend money, something that I think other teams should try to learn from rather than try to complain and cry about. So we'll see what happens. It is the hot topic. I'm sure something is going to be put out there and moves are going to be made. Hopefully they start these conversations right now because I don't want them to wait until after the season because then we're almost definitely going to head to a lockout. So hopefully the sides are talking. Hopefully they can find a way to avoid work stoppage because baseball is in the best place that it's been in a long, long time. And the Dodgers are going to win the 3-peat this year. Going to go for a 4-peat. We can't have a lockout. Let's go Dodgers.